One day, Mr. Brown decided to take everyone to the theatre as a treat, and he reserved a box so that he could get them all in. Paddington had never been to the theatre before, and he sniffed the air excitedly as he hurried on ahead of the others. It had a nice, warm smell, and everyone seemed very friendly and helpful. "Would you like a programme, sir?" "Yes, please," said Paddington. "I'll have 6, if I may." "Thank you, sir. And will you be having coffee in the interval?" Paddington licked his lips. "Yes, please," he announced. "I'll have 6 of those, too." "Very good, sir. That'll be £5. £5? Help! Oh, dear, Paddington, I think you've lost your marmalade sandwich. Look." "Must you bring sandwiches to the theatre?" asked Mr. Brown. "You've only just had supper." "It's all right, Mr. Brown. I've got some more in my suitcase." "That," said Mr. Brown, "is not what I meant." But Mr. Brown's words went unheeded as the curtain rose and they settled back to enjoy the show. The evening was a tribute to Cecily Bloom, the famous actor, who was performing pieces from his repertoire. The first item on the programme was a piece of Victorian melodrama in which he played the villain. As far as Paddington could make out, the luckless heroine seemed to spend most of her time either tied to a railway line in the face of the 6:20 from Euston, or about to part company with herself in the local sawmill. He gave Cecily several hard stares through his opera glasses. But either he was too far away, or something happened as they passed through the lens, for they had little or no effect. Cecily was adamant, and despite the snow and the pleas from the heroine, it was clear from the expression on his face as the curtain came down that he felt he had won the day. "Oh, dear," said Mrs. Brown, "I do hope the second half is a bit more cheerful." "I hope he's a bit better at remembering his lines," said Mr. Brown. "He was making half of that up." "It's readings from Shakespeare next. He's a famous playwright." "Oh, gosh, where's Paddington got to?" "Perhaps he's gone for an ice cream," said Jonathan. "Perhaps," said Mrs. Bird, and then again, "Perhaps not. Knowing that bear, it's anyone's guess where he might be." Cecily Bloom looked at Paddington in amazement. "Would you mind repeating that, bear?" he boomed. "I've come to tell you to take back your daughter," exclaimed Paddington. "It's snowing hard and she hasn't got a duffel coat. If you like, I expect Mr. and Mrs. Brown would take her in. I expect..." Having delivered his ultimatum, Paddington waited for the storm to break. But to his surprise, Cecily, who had been looking very gloomy until then, suddenly brightened. "My dear bear, this is the nicest thing that's happened to me in years. The fact that you actually believe what you've just seen. To tell you the truth, I've been having a little trouble with my lines. The prompter's been taken ill, and I suppose you wouldn't like to do me a favor, would you?" Mr. Brown gazed at the slip of paper the usherette had given him. "I have been given a very important job, signed Paddington." What can it mean? But the Browns didn't have long to wait for an answer. As the curtain went up, Cecily began his famous recital from Hamlet. "To be..." "Or not to be, Cecily," called Paddington. "Thank you, Bear. To be or not to be, Cecily, that is the question." "No, it isn't," whispered Mr. Brown. "The question is, how does Paddington get away with it?" "That," said Mrs. Bird, "is something even Shakespeare would find hard to answer."